Welcome back to another Djinn diary. Halloween is almost here, and for many, it will be a night to remember, some in joy, others in loss. Some will gather with friends and family to celebrate, while others may lose something or someone they hold precious. When I think back to my younger days, Halloween was always a highlight, no matter the hardships I faced. Growing up with no income, Halloween was a holiday anyone could enjoy without needing to spend a dime. Getting into the spirit was enough. Costumes were great if you could afford them, but not necessary. You could knock on any door, and be met with smiles and treats. It was a time to become whoever you wanted, worry-free. But as each year passes, things change, and life itself becomes scarier. With age, we gain more control over our actions, yet life remains an unpredictable mystery. We do our best to get through, but life is like thin ice. You never know when it might crack, swallowing what's precious to you. To me, that is the most terrifying thought, losing control of your own life. Fear comes in many forms, often rooted in the mind. It's a mix of primal fear and fear of failure. Lately, I feel as though life is spiraling out of control despite my efforts to hold it together. My mind feels clouded, unable to tell right from wrong, and the hope I once had seems distant, slipping further beyond my reach. This is part 5 of the Halloween series. Be sure to check out the channel for more videos, and if you subscribe now, the spirit behind you will leave you alone. Story 1. Halloween with the neighbors. To begin, I'll admit I'm not much of a people person. When the pandemic hit North America, it turned out to be one of the best things for me. Most of my day is spent online anyway, since I work in data collection at an auditing company. Let me tell you, that hasn't exactly been fun, especially with how unpredictable this year's been. Anyway, that doesn't really relate to the issue I've been having. But I figured most people start these kinds of rants with a little background, so there it is. Bottom line, I like my peace and quiet. So, when I stepped outside in early September and noticed my neighbors already decorating their yard with inflatable Frankensteins and ghosts, I was somewhat annoyed. I will admit they've done this almost every year. They have 4 young boys, all in elementary school, who want every holiday to be a big deal. So, why should 2020 be any different? But their house sits directly next to mine, so when I walk outside, it's the first thing I see every day. And with these over-the-top decorations, I knew I'd be seeing even more of it. Each day, they added more to the house, a few plastic bats hanging here, some spiderwebs draped there. I tried to ignore it, really. I'm aware I sound like the Halloween Grinch, so naturally, I kept my feelings to myself. But things changed a few nights ago when I started hearing loud, eerie screams. It seems they installed speakers near the attic, blasting what sounded like genuine crime scene audio. Imagine hearing something like that at 3:30 in the morning, it's pretty alarming. Instinctively, I called 911 to complain. I wasn't going to stay up all night because they decided to turn their home into a haunted house. Unfortunately for me, the police informed me that unless other neighbors complained, there wasn't any violation of noise ordinances. You can't be serious. Just listen. How am I supposed to sleep? I shouted, holding the phone so they could hear. Maybe I overreacted, but I was genuinely frustrated and felt I had every right to be. The operator reminded me that 911 is for emergencies only and wished me a good night, leaving me exasperated and sleep-deprived. I went to my kitchen, grabbed a bottle of Jack, and drank enough to knock myself out on the couch, timing it between the obnoxious screams. By the next morning, I'd calmed down and decided to talk to my neighbors after breakfast. Crossing their front lawn was like a minefield, thanks to the pop-up ghosts and graves scattered around. A couple nearly gave me a heart attack as I approached the door and knocked. No one answered. I tried again, still no response. I walked around to the garage and tried there. The garage was open, and I noticed their car was missing and a large pool of fake blood stained the concrete floor. Stepping forward, I saw severed heads and zombie parts lying around, probably waiting to be added to the yard. The whole area smelled awful. Covering my nose, I knocked on the door near their laundry room, trying once more to get someone's attention. Still, nothing. With a sigh, I walked across the fake blood, pausing to find the source of the foul smell. Some trash bags lay near the garage door, soaked from the rain. Figuring that was it, I rolled my eyes and, despite not feeling too neighborly, dragged the bags to the street. Back home, I wondered if any other neighbors would care enough to complain. But most of them lived too far to hear the noise. That night, I decided to record the sound, so I could have proof for the authorities. I showered and got some equipment ready to capture it, but surprisingly, there were no screams. Just silence. I stayed up until the early morning. Yes, I know how old that sounds, thinking maybe they knew I'd complained, and that's why they stopped. So, I called it a night, planning to try again the next day. The following night was the same, not a sound. In fact, I noticed none of my neighbors seemed to be going about their usual routine. My neighbors' kids, normally scrambling for the school bus each morning, were nowhere to be seen. After a week of silence, I began to worry. Initially, I thought I was just sleep-deprived, but then doubt crept in. What if the scream I heard wasn't just a sound effect? That question echoed in my mind. What if the wife had been attacked? What if there'd been a break-in? I thought about the fake blood and froze, wondering if I'd accidentally walked through an actual crime scene. The severed heads and limbs replayed in my mind, and my paranoia took over. How could I have missed the signs? I rushed out into the night, using my phone's flashlight to guide me across the dark suburban streets. Their house was eerily quiet now. Not a single light was on. I questioned my memory. Had it always been this silent? The bats and pop-up graves looked worn, as if they'd been there much longer than I remembered. The garage, now spotless, gave me chills, as if someone had cleaned the entire area to cover up evidence. My imagination ran wild. Chris, the husband, might have plotted something against his wife, Janice. I imagined him lacing her food over weeks, and on that night, she finally realized what was happening. Had I seen him with another woman? Maybe. Yes, I think I had, at that coffee shop downtown. Had he been having an affair? All these thoughts raced through my mind as I stood in the garage, trying to make sense of what happened. I needed to get inside and check on Janice. What if he left evidence? I rushed back to my house, my heart pounding as I grabbed a few tools from the shed. Some were missing, but I found what I needed, a crowbar to pry my way into their home. I broke through in 2 tries and stepped into a dim, dusty laundry room. The light switch didn't work. It was clear the family wasn't paying their bills. The house felt cold, like a tomb. My footsteps echoed down the empty corridor as I called out to anyone inside, but it looked abandoned. As I took a step forward, a fake axe suddenly swung from the wall, making me jump back. It was just another Halloween prop but looked disturbingly real. Chris must have just put up Halloween decorations before going upstairs to handle Janice. The kids were in the den, playing video games when they heard her scream. I imagined them running to check on her, but then their dad panicked. He must have thought the games would drown out any noise. Or he hoped Janice wouldn't fight back. But he miscalculated, and suddenly, he had a massacre on his hands. As I climbed the stairs, I pictured how he hunted his own children in the house. They must have been terrified. I noticed scuff marks on the wall and wrinkles in the rug where they had tried to hide. Yet he was relentless, consumed by his mission. Their cries meant nothing to him now. The youngest likely went first, I thought as I reached the top. The severed heads I'd seen in the garage haunted me again as I considered how he'd killed them. It was horrifying. Upstairs, a body hung from the rafters, head dangling loosely. It looked like another prop meant to scare off visitors. I ignored it and pushed forward, desperate to confirm my suspicions. But the room was empty. Only more Halloween decor. Chris had gone to great lengths to cover his tracks. What did he do with the rest of their bodies? I thought about the trash I'd taken out and felt nauseous. He must have dismembered them and planned to dispose of them gradually. Dazed, I stood there, stunned at the extent of his betrayal. The poor kids, reduced to waste for his lust for another woman. I ran to the bathroom and vomited, shuddering. As I caught my breath over the toilet, I looked around for clues. Perhaps he'd used chemicals on Janice's body, I guessed as I smelled the faint stench of bleach. Dissolving her with acid would have been easy. But where would he get such chemicals? Then I thought of my own shed. Had he broken in and taken my tools? Was he trying to frame me? I wasn't sure why I felt paranoid, but the thought made me uneasy. What should I do? I'd already called the police. Should I report this too? But they hadn't taken my last report seriously. I felt helpless and decided I needed more evidence. I went back to the hallway and examined the corpse. My stomach sank. It was no prop. It was Chris. Frantically, I worked to cut him down, hoping he might still be alive. It seemed impossible, but I tried to resuscitate him. His skin was blue, his body stiff. It hit me then, he had killed himself after slaughtering his family. That was the only logical explanation. Some part of me thought he deserved it if my suspicions were correct. No one with a conscience could live after killing their children. I took a few photos for proof before leaving. The house felt haunted, knowing what had happened, and I didn't want to spend another second there. Back home, I pieced together what I'd seen. But Chris's lover didn't fit. Surely, she would have come looking for him. Where was she? I lay down, trying to shake the chilling thought that maybe Chris had gone after her too. The next morning, police knocked at my door. I hadn't called them, but I let them in. They came with a warrant to search my home. A neighbor had reported suspicious activity and heard screams. Anger bubbled up. Why had they taken this report seriously, but ignored mine? But inside, my stomach twisted. What if Chris had planted evidence to frame me? The officers combed the house and brought K9 units to sniff every nook and cranny. It didn't take long for them to find the trash bags. The ones I was sure that I had taken to the road. Filled with body parts. The shed was next. They found trace evidence that my fingerprints were all over tools that were used to kill the family. I began to vomit, overwhelmed. My prints were everywhere because they were my tools. I pleaded with them to check Chris's house instead, explaining everything I knew. The interrogation felt endless, and I was sure I'd go to jail for something I didn't do. I was terrified, struggling to explain.
This is just a misunderstanding. I pay my taxes. I donate to the city. These people are the ones that are sick.
I told them how this nightmare began with the family's obsession with Halloween. My mind played tricks on me, wondering if it was a massive prank. Was it all in my head? Were these real cops? Or was I going to prison for a crime that wasn't real? Desperate, I excused myself, saying I needed the restroom, where I tried to vomit and think. I was trapped, my nerves shredded. The evidence pointed to me, and panic set in. I smashed my fist against the glass, bleeding but finally steady. Then, an idea surfaced. What if I was the killer? I hated those neighbors. Their decorations kept me up all night, every holiday. Did I confront them, argue, and kill them? No, I didn't remember that. My reflection in the mirror showed a strange, dark smile, sending chills down my spine. What was happening to me? I pounded the glass again, and the police burst in, pulling me away. The rest of the evening blurred. They gave me something to calm my nerves, and we discussed the reality of the events over the past year. They told me my neighbors had been dead for a year. And another neighbor, down the street, had grown concerned for my well-being when it seemed that I had checked on them more frequently. As though I thought they were still alive. They found no fingerprints in the body bags. Anyone could have left them there. They had been sitting in my shed, sliced up and mutilated for a year now. After the wellness check, the police wished me a good night. I stared across at my neighbor's abandoned house, now a crime scene from a year ago on Halloween, when I'd finally had enough of their screams. As I looked, their ghostly figures appeared in the yard, pointing at me. Now, I know how Halloween will go. Though I didn't plan for this nightmare, I've become a part of their celebration. Subscribe.